Hello and welcome everyone to the Center of Excellence webinar series, Strategic Communication and Information Sharing. Today we're featuring the Kennewick Police Department with Commander Trevor White. This webinar will be recorded and shared at a later time so that you can view that and listen to it on your own time when convenient. Other things to note, we do have all of the attendees on mute. However, you can pose questions at any time by going to the questions pane on your GoToWebinar dashboard and typing in those kinds of questions. We will be glad to answer those questions as they pertain to the subject matter while we're talking, as well as maybe revisit some of those questions at the end of the webinar when we do have a Q&A time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Commander Trevor White from the Kennewick Police Department. And we're so happy to have you here to share some of the things that you've learned when it comes to improving your communication and information sharing for better crime reduction results. So Commander Trevor White, thanks for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here and glad to try and give as much information as possible to help others kind of get where I'm starting to go.
That's awesome. Well, when you have a situation where you're trying to improve, it usually stems from the fact that you're trying to overcome a particular challenge. And I know that may be a good spot for us to kick off this webinar presentation, is to talk about some of the challenges that Kennewick PD was facing that are probably not unlike what many agencies face when it comes to communicating transparently and sharing intel and so forth. So let's look at some of the challenges that you guys were facing, and maybe you could walk our audience through those.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest challenge that any organization has, law enforcement or business or otherwise, I think is communicating effectively. I think you see in any organization, the number one challenge and the piece of the puzzle that is always missing or always trying to be improved upon is communication. And so that is, unlike anybody else, we had those same issues. And looking at opportunities out there to become more effective at how we communicate and not lose opportunities, not lose information in any exchange, whatever medium we're using, that was the goal, was to just try and make things better. And we communicate as a law enforcement organization on many different levels, and we saw failures in opportunities to communicate, and the way that we were communicating was one of the biggest issues. We did not have an active way to re-engage somebody that had information from a previous briefing. Let me back up a little bit. We used primarily shift briefings. At the beginning of every shift, the officers come in, they sit down, and they get all the information and intel that's happened since their last shift. And whether they were on days off or they're coming back from just a 12-hour off between shifts, whatever they were missing is then placed in front of them. And the difficulty there was that because of CJIS requirements, we had very limited ways to put this information out in front of our officers. And the email was not a good platform because now we're dealing with public records issues, and the more emails we create, the more information that we have to sort through in these public requests. We're just basically creating work for ourselves all the way around, trying to share information, be effective at law enforcement. So we also had many other issues that tie into this in the communication challenges, that our patrol officers are quite disconnected in the patrol car. Our city's infrastructure doesn't allow direct communication between the car and, say, the officer at a desk. If I'm hardline wired into the city system, sitting at a desk at a city run computer, I have access to everything, whereas in the patrol car, we're limited to what our data network allows us to connect through, and our city did not have direct access to all these things without VPNing in, and that was a very slow, and it seems like the pipeline was so small that, even just a few users would slow things down significantly for us.
Yeah, I've heard that in other departments. Yeah.
Yeah, and then our database, we didn't get a functional records management system in the car. Now, we've had the same records management system for years, but in the car it never really worked. So guys would have to go to hardline spots within the city, whether it be a fire station or any other place where we had connectivity to the city to do reports. And so that basically created more driving, it created more movement, and the more that the officers are driving around and trying to get from point A to point B to just complete work was, it's wasted money. The other thing with public records is that, as anybody from Washington knows, and any other states that are similar to us, that is our demon right now. We are dealing with just a tremendous influx and work generated with people wanting information. With the Freedom of Information Act and all those things associated, create a lot of work for us to search databases and search the work that we create to respond to these requests in a timely manner and without getting hung out to dry ourselves through the court system of people saying we didn't give them the right information and we're not being transparent, and that's the last thing that we need.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you've got a lot of different challenges that you guys are facing, and they're not all the same. They vary. They really take you in different directions to try to solve this. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about what kinds of plans that you guys made to try to attack this problem. Yeah.
So to solve, we found Smart Force, which our program is tied to. The global security of Microsoft and their iCloud or their cloud-based storage, which is backed up in 17 different spots, and I'm being sarcastic. I think it's actually 3 different locations, but it was very seamless for us and much more secure than our city server environment. The information that we held for in any CJIS capacity at the city was compliant, but at the same time, it's in one location. If that building burns down, we lose all of our information. The global security aspect of Microsoft, coupled with Smart Force's ability to allow us to share information, all of a sudden connected our patrol cars. The officer in the patrol car that was once disconnected is now fully connected with all the information that we could put in this system, as well as we're eliminating our exposure to liability relative to Freedom of Information Act, public records request, whatever term you want to use. When we now all of a sudden provide the officer in the field with a data storage opportunity as big and as fast as, because Kennewick's pretty lucky, we've got really good cell coverage. So some of my in-car capabilities with newer modems, I'm actually running faster in the car in locations in Kennewick than guys can get at a desk with a hard line to our city.
That's great.
It's amazing. So we got guys uploading photos directly to the network that go to evidence and do things from the car that they would have to drive, halfway across town to get to a fire station or some other hardwired location to do some downloads of evidence. Video, photo, crime scene type stuff, evidence that normally would have to wait till the end of shift or wait till they had an opportunity to get to a fire station or one other offline site or hardline site within the city to do. And so we're now saving time, saving gasoline. I'm saving, I have more discretionary time for my officers to be proactive. So I'm seeing, and then back to the cloud part of it. I don't have guys using their personal drop boxes that aren't secure and aren't CJIS compliant. I don't have officers using thumb drives that they lose, and then when a public records request comes in, I have no idea that there's this document that is being requested ever existed, but it's on this one thumb drive that somebody found sitting on the street somewhere because it fell out of somebody's pocket. So the security the ability for my officers to have one location to do all their work. And I'm already personally seeing, I've taken all my city files and moved them to the cloud. And when I'm in a meeting off-site and have no normal access to anything that the city would have, I can pull it up on my smartphone and click on it and email it to the person I'm sitting there having a conversation with, all done right without having to go back to my office. And the day that, day-to-day operations run on the patrol division for the Kennewick Police Department sometimes will create opportunities for me to forget things. And so it's nice to be able to just access that information and send it right then and there, and I'm done with it. It's, you check that box and I'm on to my next thing, because if I can do it right then and there, it gets done. If I don't, I have an opportunity to forget, and if I have those opportunities, I do forget things.
Well, I really like that. I didn't even think about that efficiency of being away from the office at meetings, and that does happen weekly, I'm sure. So it's nice to be able to leverage the newer technology in the cloud. So very cool, very cool.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. It also, our records division loves SmartForce for the mere fact that we have a one-stop location now to search for any record or any phrase. I mean, a lot of times when people put in a public records request, we're dealing with one right now that involves pilot programs, and that is the specific request, anything that has to do with pilot program, and that is the search criteria. So we can type in pilot programs or pilot program into the search box at the top of either your OneDrive account or in the SmartForce, and anything, and I think we're going to see this later on in the presentation, the search ability here saves so much time, energy, and money, whereas in the past, we would have to put in a request to our IT division to do a hard scrub of all the servers that police department has access to try and find keywords, and then they have to download them to us. They have to give them to us on a separate drive or make space on a separate server and give us access to it to then go through and filter, what may be responsive to our request, where everything right now, everything today is in front of us and accessible because we control it, and it's much more secure than it was before.
Well, that's great on the security of that search function. I'm curious, does that search function also help you collaborate on crime responses and initiatives? Does it play into effect there as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think probably the best example I have is going very back to the beginning of our discussion here. Talked about how we share information at shift briefing, and prior to being able to share that information on SmartForce and having everybody have access to that information, if something came up in a briefing in the past, the officer would have to go to the supervisor and say, hey, can you check the history about this particular name or this address or any number of search criteria that this officer is trying to connect the dots with. And we would have to go through individual days, pages, things that was just so challenging to find that information, that now we search the term in SmartForce and it comes up. Every single item or piece that could be responsive is now at the officer's fingertips, and potentially in his vehicle or her vehicle out in their zone, and they're trying to solve a problem based on information they remembered hearing from weeks ago or months ago. They can search and go, oh yeah, this is what's going on, and make that connection there, and it may solve a crime. We've had some successes where the information at your fingertips has, because somebody's got a hold of a guy in reasonable suspicion for something going on, and they know there's more to it, but they don't know where to find it. That person in the past would probably walk, whereas now we're holding them accountable and putting them in jail for something because we had that information that we needed at that time to hold them accountable.
Well, that sounds incredibly powerful, and I think you were going to share some of those further examples of collaboration on key crimes, and I think you had a robbery series. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation during that robbery series and some of the actions that you guys took?
Yeah, and I'll save the long story, because for several weeks we had a robber that was doing very similar robberies, and early on, after the first couple, we realized we're probably dealing with the same suspect in all these robberies. We did have a couple of copycats not exact copycats, but robberies that happened at the same time, same type of business that we were able to eliminate that weren't tied to our suspect. But one of the things that was interesting, and I'll tell the end of the story because it kind of ties it all together, is during this robbery series, we get some intel from one of our dope units that had an informant that identified this suspect, and that happened very close to, if not the same day or two before the very last robbery that we caught him, the day we caught him. And what was interesting is that we were getting ready to ramp up a discussion board and open the discussion, an operational discussion in SmartForce about this specific series. And this is exactly what we were just talking about as far as, sharing information and having information at your fingertips. As soon as you open up a discussion board in a discussion topic or whatever in SmartForce, every officer in my agency, including support staff, have access to SmartForce. So if they have a question or if we want to push information to them, in the past we couldn't push it to them while they were in the car. There was really no way that was CJIS compliant to push information in the car. Email didn't work because you'd never get a ding and a notification that your email in the car, because it was not a hard line to the city that you had new information. So the neat thing is with SmartForce, we could tell everybody, we could send a CAD message to everybody, check SmartForce for this update. So getting back to the story, late in the afternoon during the commute on one of our busiest roads in our city, we have another armed robbery. Suspect flees towards an apartment complex, and as soon as that happens, one of the detectives that's assigned this case was listening to the entire thing go down on the radio, and he instantly recognizes, as they're trying to put together this discussion to go out on SmartForce, that they've made all these connections to put it into this discussion, and before they hit go, this robbery happens. I mean, the timing was crazy. The detective hears him running towards that apartment complex. The detective knows that his mother lives or has an apartment in that complex. He instantly connects the dots, and he goes, we've got to send this operational discussion out right now, and we've got to let all the patrol know what's going on here. And so they do. They send this discussion out. I get a notification saying, hey, we need to let patrol be aware so they can get all this up on their screens in the cars while they're on containment, so they get this guy's information, photo, the whole thing. Because now all of a sudden we've got him identified. So that happens. Everything, I mean, the sharing of information happened at the flip of a switch here, and we've got guys on containment. We've got detectives moving now. We've got a suspect that just based on the suspicion that he was headed towards his mom's apartment, got us to mom's apartment. Some things kind of fell into place, and then the bad guy ends up, long story short, bad guy ends up getting out of the area before we could set containment. He gets in a car and he drives away. But he does run basically to his mom's apartment nearby, gets in a car, and then drives to another apartment in our town where we have, because of this operation, we've got other detectives set up watching that apartment. And while we're finishing the robbery investigation, suspect and his girlfriend, and there's the picture, I think, on our next slide. Yep, there it is. The suspect and his girlfriend are walking out of the girlfriend's apartment, and he's wearing the exact same clothing that was described in the robbery. So, I mean, we've got a visual confirmation of the suspect. We've got him dead to rights based on the picture, and now he's wearing the exact same clothes that were on video of him robbing this place. So those two pieces fell basically into our lap because we had this information sharing. Had the detectives not been able to see a photograph of this guy, and then also the officers on scene were quickly able to do with like a smartphone. They took a video of the video playing at the victim location, which happened to be an e-cig or a vape shop. They videoed it and sent it through and added to the discussion so that guys in the car could see the video of what the suspect was wearing, and it's like dead to rights match. We start, basically putting these pieces of this puzzle together, and he ends up admitting to everything. We tried to get him on a couple of the other look-alike robberies, and he's like, yeah, that wasn't me. So it kind of all put everything into place for us that we had the right guy. We knew that the other ones weren't him, but we still asked about him in case they were, somehow tied. But I can't tell you from where we were a year ago in our agency, we would have still solved this crime. We still would have picked this guy up, but it would have taken a lot longer, and we could have had several more robberies. And he was using a legitimate armed gun that he had taken from his brother-in-law or someone. So, the recipe for disaster here, had we not been in a position with Smart Force to get this information out to the troops on the ground, this series would not have solved as quickly as it did, and we may have ended up in a shooting with him, or he may have ended up accidentally or potentially hurting someone during a robbery. So I think that this is a fantastic example of one of the early stages, because we're really new to Smart Force. This was a huge win for us, but this is just baby steps into the program. We've got so much more to do that it's just amazing what lies ahead for our agency.
Well, that's a great story, though, and to have that kind of an impact and be, using the system not for a long period of time, but already seeing these kinds of results. That's awesome. It's exciting to hear that you're able to be more efficient and arm your officers with the tools they need to do their job more effectively and faster. So that's a great story. I'm sure our audience appreciates the sharing of the details that you did and what that looks like on your communication platform that you put together. So thanks for sharing that. And I believe that you also had an example of getting the data organized and how that was helpful as well. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how Crime Analyst works with you.
Yeah. The neat thing is we've had a crime analyst since 1996 for my agency. Yet that crime analyst position has taken on many other roles in our organization. I mean, we're not so huge that we don't have people doing multiple things, and that was also the case with our crime analyst. She was our grant writer and did a bunch of other things. But with Smart Force, she is now able to. Crime analysis requires, and this is just my opinion, it requires the use of statistics and numbers and all those things that they use to identify trends and hotspots and all the things that we want an analyst to do to put our officers in the best position to either prevent crime or solve it. And Smart Force is a tool that has brought her into a timeliness position where she can put out information in a timely manner. And the example would be the robbery. She was the forefront of getting this information out quickly because she was working on that discussion with the detectives at the time. And that, number one, is the timeliness with Smart Force and being able to push the information out simultaneously as soon as you click the button to share it, and then the ability to go back and search it. So even if you knew, and it goes back to the example I had a couple examples ago, which was being able to go back and search and look for. So all the things we're looking here, what's on the screen right now is completely searchable, and we'll talk about that soon. We'll give an example soon, but the ability to search for it, and then the ability to assign problems. We can see right there on the screen where the arrow is at follow-up needed. So an offgoing supervisor can say, hey, this needs to get done, and this is how it needs to be done, and this is who needs it, and then they can also assign an officer to do it. And the neat thing is that Smart Force has a bunch of triggers, and pardon my use of language here because it's really not a trigger, it's probably an alert or it's a notification of some sort, but Smart Force, when somebody puts that follow-up request or follow-up needed in there, when they identify who it needs to go to and who it's for and what it's for, it identifies all the people in that string and says, okay, this has been initiated, this is who's supposed to do it, and then you get updates as those pieces of that puzzle are put together and finished, and then like that last arrow sitting right there, follow-up complete. It's still not complete until someone says it's complete and checked off on it. So the workflows with that are huge because agency my size, when we have shift change, especially if it's a shift change at 6 p.m. in the evening when things are really busy, I mean, that's when our commute is, and so shift change at 6 p.m., the day shift comes in, the night shift goes out, and they high-five at the door and switch, hot seat cars, basically. There is an opportunity to miss information that needs to be exchanged. So with Smart Force, we reduce our opportunities to lose that information in translation or in transition between shifts. And it's neat because one supervisor who is probably the watch commander of the day and is the eyes and ears and making sure all the information is shared, with a couple of clicks they share something that they've already created. They create the pass on details, and so they add a little bit in there asking the next shift to cover it and assign it to somebody so we know it's getting done. That's the big thing. If you just say, hey, we need your shift to do this, and the shift, 6 p.m. shift starting, they right out of the gate are running and chasing their tails. So it makes it easier when someone's name is attached to it, so that they know they have something to do and they have the rest of the shift to take care of it. And it's just, something like here is just as simple as getting video footage from one of the clerks at the victim business.
Well, that's a great example, and not only are you helping the transference of information so that things get done in a timely fashion, it also drives accountability up. So that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it really does.
So I know, Commander White, you've talked a lot about the search functions and so forth, but that was another thing that you wanted to definitely share with our audience is that yes, the data is accessible anywhere and now even in the patrol cars, but that by putting this information in these discussion boards, it looks like there's ability to identify problem areas faster. So maybe we could show one more example of a discussion that was created and how that played out.
Sure, absolutely. So this one we're looking at here is from a pass-on regarding a specific location. And hypothetically, let's say that this particular location has become a problem, or we are now recognizing this place on 4th Avenue is a problem. And we want to basically find out how many times we've been there in the past to start really looking at if we can do nuisance type things or what other options we have as an agency to try and solve the problem. So the search function itself it's been huge. I talked about from a PDR standpoint, but it still solves the same problem. The function itself is being able to search for 4th Avenue is going to search every single record that SmartForce contains. And right now, aside from our criminal records management database, we do everything in SmartForce. So that coupled with the OneDrive, which is the CGIS compliant cloud storage, each officer, we have, I think when we switch to this SmartForce coupled with Microsoft's cloud, we roughly have about a terabyte of information storage per officer. In an organization our size, we basically tripled our available storage without costing the city any extra money. And one of the things they liked about us moving to the cloud was we are the biggest user of IT in the city. And aside from our records management system, the only thing they do for us now is hardware management. So if we have a printer go down or we have any connectivity issues that are related to hardware, that's the only thing they have to fix for us, because they don't have, all our updates are done automatically and they're completely seamless through Microsoft. And so we're completely autonomous now, and the agency our size, in a city our size, we are the biggest single department in the city, and we also took, obviously a lot of IT's resources. And the neat thing is that IT doesn't have enough staffing. Everybody's dealing with budget issues, and so when we moved to the cloud, we saved them a ton of full-time FTEs, I guess is the best way to say it. We haven't seen the actual numbers on how many FTEs have been saved, but now they're able to start catching up to all the other problems that they've got to deal with as an IT group throughout the city, because they're not messing or dealing with our problems other than hardware, and hardware for us wasn't a big problem. It was software. So anyway, back to where we were talking about, this search feature. You type in 4th Avenue search in that upper right-hand corner. You guys can see it's up there above the police car that's in the picture. and all of a sudden we get what you see there, which is a search result. And depending on how many, that Fourth Avenue is a pretty vague search, at least it would be in our group, and you may get up to, several pages of information, but at least you can sift through it, and it shows each place where it was located when the search function was used. And on this particular screen, this shows all the results found, probably searching, and most of the search results are related to our shift briefings, giving addresses of locations that we had problems or had issues with. And then we can start to drum it down a little bit or drill it down a little bit, maybe recognizing that Fourth Avenue was too broad of a search. We can narrow the scope a little bit once we find information that we want in there, and then really start to get to the nuts and bolts of the information we're trying to find.
So it's not unlike what people do every day by just going to Google and doing a Google search.
Right, but it's our information, and it's secure, and it's easy to get to. That's the hardest part in the past was, we all knew where to go to get it, but going to get it took so many steps and required you to be in the station that it never happened.
I see. Well, again, that speaks to the efficiency. So congratulations on that. That's awesome that you're able to show another example of efficiency with leveraging technology so that you can fight crime better. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, very good. Well, very good. I think our audience really appreciates seeing and hearing you talk through real examples. So the examples that you shared, we're very happy that you took the time to take us through those things. And maybe as we're wrapping up, we talk a little bit about overall results, and maybe we can just talk through a few things that you guys have seen, even though it's been a short period of time since you worked to try to solve this challenge with communication and start improving it. But maybe you can talk through some of the results.
Yeah, so they're up there. We've had more arrests and more timely arrests. I think I gave some good examples earlier about timeliness, and we are connecting more dots that gives us more probable cause to put people in jail, and our chief is very big at putting, basically holding criminals accountable, and that means putting them in jail from our end. The deterrence has been a huge thing because we have officers now with real-time data. We have little series of crimes going on in certain areas, and we can get the officers into those areas to try and create a deterrence. And we're seeing where we've either pushed them to other areas that was easier for us to collect evidence or get them on camera or what have you, but we've been able to establish a deterrence because we have real-time information that can be accessed in the car by the person or the officer that needs it at the time that they need it. That's the biggest thing, and that just shows that we have enhanced communication. The effectiveness of our overall work function as a police department has been enhanced because information has been our crutch. We haven't had it, or we didn't know where to go get it, and now we have it, and we're just running on all cylinders, or at least more cylinders. We're headed down the right path. I talked at the very beginning of our conversation, but our daily activity log, which is something we keep track of, so we're a small enough agency that we can continue to share that information on a daily basis, the stuff that stands out. And in the past, officers didn't have access to it without having to go to a supervisor and say, can I look at it, or can I log in here? Now, everybody in the organization has access to it, and that has been enormous in our ability to, again, communicate, arrest, and deter.
That's awesome. Well, very good. And I also remember you talking at the beginning about the having assignments in the shift briefing that helped transfer information, but also drive accountability. So awesome results. Thanks for sharing those. With any new project, though, or initiative, especially when you're trying to leverage technology, there's always lessons learned. Probably some of them were more frustrating, and others maybe are benefits. But maybe you could share a little bit about some of the things that you guys learned through this process in the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about a lot of that stuff already, so I won't go over it again. But we've had a lot of unexpected results, but we've also had some expected results that turned out better than we anticipated. Our IT was very gun shy about moving to the cloud because they would not have control of the information, and I just think maybe other IT departments in other cities similar our size have those same feelings, that they start to lose control of stuff that they've always had control of, and that was a struggle for them. But as soon as they realized the benefits associated with what we're now doing with cloud storage, we are saving money. I won't have I won't be able to put a dollar to it for a while, but it'll be very interesting to see at the end of our budget cycle the unexpected and money-saving results of IT not having to do anything but hardware work for us. The data storage, and then some other things that we may not actually see a benefit on the outward side, but what PRA or public records requests would we have maybe failed in providing all the information because we didn't know something existed somewhere, and now we have the search function to identify all the information and get it in a timely manner so that we can save on FTEs, which ultimately saves in budgets all over the place.
Very cool. Well, very good, very good. I don't want to overrun our time with our audience, so why don't we move on to best practices and take any questions that our audience has at this point, unless you have anything else to add, Commander.
No, I don't. I think the only thing I would add is if someone chooses to go with SmartForce, they are a great resource, and I didn't have any IT assistance getting my program up and running, so that was a really big challenge for me. But I also didn't ask the right questions, and I could have done it a lot smoother knowing what I know now. So make sure you guys, we leverage all the people at stake here in SmartForce and Adventos to get your deployment and implementation up and running.
Very good, sir. Well, let's turn on the microphones on our participants and see if they have any best practices they would like to share or any Q&A that's been typed in. Let's just go to that. So let's just give it a second here. Commander White, there's one question that did come in. And it sounds like they're honoring the fact that you've done a nice job with your improvement of communication. The question that they do pose in addition, though, to their statement is, where are you hoping to go next with information sharing for fighting crime?
Well, I think creating more efficiencies. I mean, we are at literally the tip of the iceberg for this. I know I've said that a couple of times. We have not even been using SmartForce for a year yet. We have a lot to learn and a lot to develop, and there's a lot of efficiencies that we are creating by switching to the use of SmartForce in workflows. One of the biggest benefits I'm going to receive from SmartForce is workflows. Our agency was pretty paper oriented. Many of our response to resistance or use of force documentation would run through the chain, come from the officer to the supervisor. The supervisor does their investigation, forwards it to the commander for review, and finally to the chief's office. Well, that paper trail, things can get lost, but it also takes time. Now I can do these things. If a use of force or a response to resistance happens on a weekend, I can have it all done and ready for the chief Monday morning because I can do it from home. We all know that when you're exempt, you don't get overtime on the weekends. It's undertime, but that means you get extra work time to do things so that you're ready to go on Monday and do other things that are occupying your time. But the benefits. Having the workflows that show where it went and their date and time stamped and things don't get lost, the CGIS requirements to all these things, it being secure. We're just getting into the discussion boards. After that Robbery Series, our discussion topics went through the roof. We've got projects all over the place a lot of these are officer initiated. They're creating their own projects because they want help solving a problem in their zone. And I see us moving towards there's a local agency near us that is working on what's called stratified policing, and I see us moving that direction as well, probably something more along the lines that works for Kennewick PD, but we begin with the information sharing and getting it out timely and having access to it immediately will help continue to let us fight crime, solve problems, and the benefits just keep coming in, because I can tell you what, working with Adventos and coming up with ideas about, hey, this would look better this way, or hey, have you guys ever thought about doing one of these? And when they say, well, yeah, we've had a couple of agencies ask about this, and then they all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's run with it. Let's make this and put it in our next update, and all of a sudden we've got some new equipment to use, some new tools in the toolbox, so to speak, in SmartForce, and it's growing as we're growing. And I think that this time next year we're going to probably be a completely different organization as we've made the complete transfer to the cloud and information sharing as a region. We have a couple of opportunities with the auto theft task force and our SWAT team. Our regional SWAT team is going to be housed probably on the Kennewick's site, and we can give everybody on the SWAT team access to this particular area of the site. So again, we have the benefits of everybody going to one place and getting the same information rather than it being disseminated out and people interpreting it or not really understanding the whole thing. They have a place to go now and get that piece of the information that they need to do their job.
Well, Commander White, that's a great answer to where you're headed. Thanks so much for your time and telling us where you've been and how you've gotten to your present state. I hope our audience has found value in listening to some of the challenges you face that I'm sure they face to some degree, and hopefully picking out some pearls that maybe they can implement. And it's always good to hear what others are doing and doing well. It inspires us all. So thanks, Commander White, for taking us through those things. And it's great that you're able to organize data more effectively, to do more data-driven policing, and to fight crime more effectively. We appreciate everything you do out there every day that your agency's doing, and appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm glad I could help.
All right, Commander White. Thanks, everyone, for being a part of this webinar, and we look forward to the next Center of Excellence webinar, hopefully coming soon. Certainly more details will follow as the next ones are scheduled. Thanks again to Commander White and the Kennewick Police Department. We'll talk to you guys later.